I think I've known for a very long time that the United States does not give a shit about the Middle East, except for its resources. And I don't think that it actually gives a shit about Israel either. I think that it's a strategic foothold in the Middle East. I think that it's a strong misconception that that their alliance with Israel has anything to do with the Jewish people or protection of the Jewish people or Israelis. They do not care about human life. They set out. They did Operation Prosperity Guardian, and that was to protect money. If we boil it all down, they came out in force to protect our capitalist interests, but do not come out in force to protect human life. That says it all. So if we're concerned about, or if you need to look back on, the U.S.'s kind of history in the Middle East, we've made this kind of overarching, sweeping idea that we are, bringing democracy, that we are, bringing these beautiful ideals of liberalism and freedom to the Middle East. We have always been there to protect capitalist interest, money at the first set, and we will pretend like we care about human life if necessary. That's how I feel that the U.S. thinks about the Middle East and everywhere in the world.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rania Khalek, and this is Dispatches. Speaking out against Israel's genocide in Gaza is crucial, but it comes with consequences. Those brave enough to put themselves out there to defend the people of Gaza against mass slaughter risk losing their livelihoods, friends, and future career opportunities at the hands of a well-oiled lobbying apparatus that seeks to punish and silence Israel's critics. And they'll go after anyone, including celebrities. Perhaps that's why so many have chosen to remain silent. Still others have pushed past the fear to stand bravely on the right side of history. Joining me to discuss this and more is one of those brave voices, fashion icon Alana Hadid, who comes from one of the most outspoken Palestinian families in the celebrity world. But before we jump into it, this is just part of this episode. The full episode is available to Breakthrough News members only. You can become a member at patreon.com/breakthroughnews. And as always, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get a notification whenever we post new content. And if you appreciate the show, you can also donate below on YouTube. Alana, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you on. I'm so excited to chat with you again. I was lucky enough to get to see you give a very heartfelt, beautiful speech in DC last month during one of the massive protests, one of many, and I hope there's more to come. And I really appreciate everything that you've done since, actually, even before this horrific genocide began. You've been so outspoken on Palestine. So I've been following you for a very, very long time, even before this, but it's been so wonderful to see your voice out there and for you, using your platform to bring so much attention to what's happening in Palestine. So I want to start with a little bit about you.
Sure.
You and your family are very well known in the fashion world, and it does stoke a lot of controversy whenever you speak out or any of your family members speak out on the issue of Palestine, and your family is Palestinian. So this is personal to you. So I guess let's start with, could you tell our audience about your family history as it relates to Palestine?
Sure. So my father, Muhammad Hadid, was born in Palestine, in Nazareth. His family home, where my grandfather was born, was Safed. So he was born in the Galilee. My grandmother was also from Nazareth, from Palestine. Her family, for many generations, were Palestinian. And he was born there in 1948, and 9 days later, my grandmother was forcibly expelled from her home. My grandfather came back from work. He was working at a university. He was expelled by the Irgun or Haganah from his home. And and they had to travel. They actually, my grandfather was with two of my aunts. My grandmother was with my father and his sister, and they were separated for almost a year and ended up finding each other through mutual friends who were doctors or going to multiple refugee camps. So they were separated. They went to multiple different places, but my family was born in Palestine and have generational ancestry in the state of Palestine. So, yeah, and forcibly expelled from there. It was really traumatizing and horrific for the entire family.
It's so wild to think about, like, having a baby in that sort of situation, like having to, I mean, we're watching it happen like live in Gaza right now, where people are having to flee their homes with, you know, a backpack, whatever they can carry, and sometimes their kids, like, and just the idea of having an infant in that situation. And then, oh my, the trauma of not seeing each other for a year and not being able to even reconnect. And I don't even know how you begin to find lost family members after that sort of chaos in 1948, 1949, without the technology that we have today. It's insane to think about. And what's even more insane is the story you just described is literally what we're watching right now. So I'm just curious, you know, as you're seeing what's been taking place the last 4 months, we're now into 5 months. Does that, I mean, has that made you reflect more on 1948 and what your own family went through?
100%. I've said it before, and I feel 100% that I have a better understanding of what my father went through in 1948. I have a greater understanding of the Nakba because of the Nakba that is happening now in Gaza. I have seen women give birth in Gaza and have to flee the hospitals where they gave birth 30 minutes or an hour after they have a child. So I have a 100% a greater understanding of what happened to my family. I'm seeing it now. We are all seeing the Nakba happen to Palestinians in Gaza. They don't know if they will be able to go back to their homes. Do they even have homes to go back to? So yes, this is horrific on a level of the Nakba, and even worse. I mean, my father says constantly, this is worse than what happened in 1948. This is more horrific. And maybe it's because we're getting to see it, but it is beyond. So yes, I have an understanding of what my father went through now because of what I'm seeing now. Yeah.
And then, you know, I'm curious, we all have like a different evolution on these issues. Like my family's Lebanese. I grew up, you know, watching Israel bomb my family. And so I've always had an understanding, even as a kid, that this country is not very nice, that our country, the US, gives all this money. Like I grew up hearing my parents complain a lot, like our taxes are basically like supporting the bombing of our relatives. And so I grew up with that understanding. And then I just became kind of more radicalized on the issue with each, you know, horrific mowing the lawn, you know, as Israel likes to call it, of Gaza. Like I still remember 2008, 2009, Operation Cast Lead, 2014, 2021. So I'm just curious, you know, for you, your father's Palestinian, your grandparents are Palestinian. You've heard these stories growing up, but it doesn't, you know, it kind of, even if you learn it growing up, it still kind of takes a minute when you grow up in the US specifically to sort of make your way to really understanding. So I'm just curious, you know, what's been your personal evolution on this issue? Is it something you understood sort of from day one, or, you know, maybe something that you've come to understand better with time?
I think I've come to understand it better with time, for sure. I think I was a political science major. I have a background in international relations and diplomacy. It's a little known fact. A lot of people just think I'm speaking about this because I'm Palestinian, but I'm quite well educated on the subject. But I think in learning about just international relations as a whole, geopolitics, and, you know, the war machine and all of these things as it related to a lot of other things, a lot of other places, a lot of other countries, I became more and more curious about the realities of how it related to Israel and Palestine. And I started educating myself. I spent a lot of time having to self-educate because, you know, I wasn't quite educated in school. So I've spent a lot of time. I mean, I was educated. Was I thoroughly educated? Was
Right.
were they talking about Palestine? Not really. So a lot of self-education, a lot of personal reading lists, and just interacting and speaking to my family in Palestine and my friends who are Palestinian, who've grown up in Palestine, moved to the US, or are still living there to this day, and just asking questions and learning. And I am learning every day. I am truly learning. This is a learning process. We have a lot of unlearning and relearning to do, especially in the United States, a lot of unlearning to do. So yeah, I don't think that I understood at day one, and I don't think that anyone can truly understand at day one. So I'm understanding now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want people to really hear that too, because I think it's like sometimes it's okay to be wrong. And it's okay to recognize. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking in general. Like with other people, it's like okay to just be wrong and to be like, oh yeah, I was wrong, and it's actually not my fault because I was taught all the wrong things by CNN.
I mean, look at anti-Zionist Jews. Mm-hmm. Think about how much unlearning they've had to do and how much relearning they've had to do in order to get to the place where they were willing to say, I reject and condemn everything that I was taught. And I now have a greater understanding of what I was taught and how it was intended to keep me from the understanding that there were Palestinians, that they were real people, that they were there, from the beginning, and that we forcibly expelled them. I think that is a good example of how, you can really do the work and get to a place of true understanding.
And I think right now, the amount of people who are just so hungry to understand this issue because they're just like so horrified by what they're seeing. It's like it's like nothing I've ever seen before in all the time that I've been following this issue. But, I also want to ask you, like on a personal level, I mean, I think both of us were teenagers in the 9/11 era. And I remember being made to feel very bad about my background and where my family comes from. I think anybody with any Arab in them was automatically sort of like made to feel very ashamed after 9/11. And, it took me a really long time to be more comfortable with my own identity after that. So I'm just curious, I know you were originally in the DC area, which is also where I grew up. Were you ever made to feel ashamed being Palestinian and Arab? And I say Palestinian specifically here because I do recall that right after 9/11, there was an attempt to actually blame Palestinians for the attack. Yeah. So how did you deal with that when all that happened?
Well, I was in my freshman year of college. I'm a bit older. I was in my freshman year of college, and I was in Arizona, which is an interesting state, and I was studying political science at the time. So, my thought process was, I'm studying political science. I'm, the people that I'm around are probably, more in the know. They understand about international relations, and they get geopolitics. Boy, was I wrong. And I remember going to a class that was not a mandatory class after 9/11. They were kind of allowing people to take classes if they felt. And someone in the class said, why don't we just kill all the Arabs? Basically, something to that effect.
What?
Yeah. We should just get rid of them. They cause problems. They always have, something to that effect. And at the time I was a bleach blonde, blue-eyed, 6-foot girl. And I stood up and I said, you just killed half my family. And everyone was shocked because, obviously to a lot of people, I don't look Arab. I do look very Palestinian. I think that's something that people really need to understand. I actually look incredibly Palestinian.
You do.
Yes. And I think people think, I do look a lot like my mom and she's Irish, but I look incredibly Palestinian. I look exactly like my cousins who are Palestinian on both sides. When I walk around in Palestine, I don't feel like I stand out. I look exactly like everyone there. So I think people had this misconception of me that I was this like American girl. And I think I woke some people up. For sure, there was a lot of anti-Arab hate, and a lot of other communities also suffered because of it. And I do think that to discount the Islamophobia and the xenophobia and the anti-Arab and anti-Palestinianism that happens after these events is a detriment to and is not reality. There's a lot of anti-Arab and anti-Palestinian hate that happens after this, and it does feel similar to that in the sentiments of politicians, in the way that these fires are being stoked. It's very 9/11-esque.
Yeah, I was in the States. I mean, as I saw you there, but like it is. I mean, it's you feel the actual support and solidarity on the ground with Palestine in a beautiful way. I was really impressed with that. But oh my God, just watching the politicians, watching Capitol Hill, watching our own president, like it's been really disgusting on every level. I've been completely blown away, and we'll get to that. But I also just wanted to ask you about the world that you're most involved in, which is like the celebrity world, and the fashion world, which hasn't exactly been, so outspoken on this issue. I mean, there have been people who absolutely deserve credit for speaking out. There's been people like Susan Sarandon, who actually like lost her agency as a result of speaking out.
Yes.
There's Melissa Barrera, who lost who lost a few jobs, I think, for speaking out. There's, I don't think he's had any repercussions, but Mark Ruffalo has been, speaking out. He's been really great. I mean, I could go on and on about the people who have been wonderful and very brave with their voices on this issue. And they've definitely faced repercussions. I mean, you are one of the most vocal people out there. I know it's impacted your family. Like your dad's always getting harassed. I see him getting harassed constantly. I know your sisters face the wrath of the pro-Israel zealots whenever they say anything. So I guess I'm just curious, has using your platform to speak out very, very loudly against this genocide, has it impacted your work, your relationships, your contracts? Have you lost friends over this? I know a lot of people have.
I'm lucky in a lot of ways. Obviously, I'm incredibly blessed in that, I work for myself and I get to choose the companies and the brands and the people I associate with. I'm very lucky in that. Yes, I know that that a lot of companies were scared to work with me after I was speaking out. I'm sure that there were a lot of people who reconsidered their association with me, and I moved on. And there are a lot of really amazing brands that are vocal and that are proud and that in working with me are taking a stance. Their work with me is saying to people, we care for humanity and we want to represent that. But yeah, I've lost a ton of friends. I thought I had lost a lot of friends after 2021 and everything that was happening in Sheikh Jarrah and at Al-Aqsa. I was very vocal then, and I think I kind of did, a wholesale relook at all the people I was speaking with.
Yeah.
And I thought I had kind of gotten down to the right people, a small amount, a core group. And after October 7th, I saw some incredibly vile things come out of the mouths of people who I considered really close friends, who didn't even consider having a conversation with me. And, I'm a direct source. I'm a Palestinian. So the conversation could have happened quite easily, and it didn't. And I was sad to lose those friends. But at the same time, I'm not sad to not be associated with people who can't find their humanity. I'm not sad to not be associated with people who believe that the murdering of children, women, men, civilians is okay. So I'm not sad about losing those type of friends. Those were probably not my friends to begin with. So yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting time, but I definitely feel like I'm in a better place. I have some amazing friends that have come out of this, and people who I've brought into or my community or who have brought me into theirs. And I feel really blessed to be around people who truly care about the world.
I love that. Not that you lost friends, but I just love that,
Yeah.
it is the fact that like in this moment, I really do look at the world now as like before and after October 7th. It's like, I don't even really remember what it was like before, but at the same time, a line has been drawn in the sand.
Yes.
And it's a very red line. And I totally hear what you're saying. I mean, it's kind of like this is genocide. If you are justifying genocide, if you are making excuses for genocide, like I absolutely judge your character. And it's like, I don't even know how to have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
Especially with people who were supposed to be friends. So I think that a lot of people can relate to what you're saying. I've also seen you be the victim of censorship. And a lot of us have been in very many ways. And what I mean by that is on social media. I mean, I think this has really brought out, on the one hand, how essential social media has been for seeing what's happening, particularly because journalists aren't allowed into Gaza. So we're completely dependent on people from there being able to like basically live stream what's happening. But at the same time, so many of these companies are under the control of, corporations that work closely with the Israeli government. And, you're most active, I think, on Instagram. What's that been like, dealing with the censorship on Instagram?
It's been super interesting. I mean, I believe that I've been shadow banned since 2021.
Oh, wow.
I have, I now have over 500,000 followers, but probably in 2021, I was more like 300,000 or so. And I used to get 100 and maybe 150,000 views on my story pre 2021. I am lucky now if I can get to 20,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been interesting to watch. Sometimes, sometimes it'll jump up. But I stay at like a baseline of like, I'm excited if I hit 20. So I've had to kind of find different ways of reaching people. And it has been interesting. I had a post that became a violation, a few days ago. I think it was on Sunday. A post that I did, I think the Saturday before, was taken down. And I was marked for a violation, and then it was put back up, and then it was retaken down, and I was violated again. So I thought that was quite interesting. But yeah, I mean, we are being censored because we're saying things that these people, whoever they are, do not want other people to hear. They know that we have a reach. They know that the people who are speaking to multiple diverse audiences, and they don't want those audiences to be exposed. They only want the people who've already been speaking about Palestine to kind of live in this echo chamber. And we are dedicated to allowing the world to know what's happening, and we're going to do it by any means necessary. So if that means posting on social media or taking to the streets or, making speeches, doing interviews and podcasts, we're going to do whatever we can to, to talk about what's going on in Palestine, from Gaza to the West Bank.
And I do follow your broadcast channel on Instagram. It's very good. I recommend others do. I know that's one way that people have like been kind of getting around that. And those updates have been so useful. Thank you. I want to go to like the issue of US politics, because I think this is what's been really incredible to watch. I mean, we can talk a little bit about how surprised we are or not by Israeli behavior. But like when it comes to what I'm seeing right now, I mean, I think you probably would agree with me on this. We expect the Republican Party to support everything the Israelis do and everything Netanyahu does, because the Likud party is kind of just an extension of the Republican Party anyways. I mean, Netanyahu's basically a neocon. And because the Republican base does, in fact, support and openly love like war and promoting racism for the most part. Yeah. But what's been really shocking to me has been to see the way the Democratic Party has behaved. And maybe it shouldn't be that shocking, but they've always been institutionally very pro-Israel, right? But like they've always had this kind of like tension with Netanyahu. And they, they'll go up to the line, but not quite as far as Republicans. But what I'm seeing now, the level of dehumanization of Arabs, of Palestinians, the level of backing for genocide, it's almost like a bloodlust from the Biden administration, from Biden himself. I mean, every time I see John Kirby or Matt Miller get up on that podium and spend their time justifying starving babies. I mean, they literally openly justify the intentional starvation of Palestinian babies. I'm just like blown away by these people. So I guess I'm curious, maybe I'm naive, but have you been surprised by just how far this administration has been willing to go to support this?
I don't think I'm surprised. Biden said he was a Zionist. Kamala Harris is a Zionist and is married to a Zionist. No matter who has been in office, red or blue, they have always supported the occupation of Palestine. They have always militarily and monetarily supported Israel. And I don't think that if we want to see a difference in the world and with the knowledge that the United States has a lot of impact on what happens all over the world, we can't continue in this two-party system. That both parties are functioning at a very similar level when it comes to international relations, or when it comes to internal struggles. So, I don't think that we should be surprised. I do think that the fact that it has gone on this long and that we are in an election year, I don't believe that Biden really believed that this would be an election issue. I think that he thought that, he could take, I almost believe that he thought that this would, rally some sort of base for him in the Republican Party to swing to him. I think that he made a very grave mistake because there are a lot more humanitarians in this world than he. Yeah. My dog doesn't like Biden. There are a lot more humanitarians, a lot more people who are paying attention, and a lot more, there are people like Bassan and Motaz, and there are people on the ground who are showing the world what's going on. There are people who dedicated their actual physical life to letting people know what's going on, and the world is waking up. And it's going to be an election issue. People are, going to remember in November what happened in October and November and December and January and February, and his only hope to come back from this is to call for a permanent and sustained ceasefire and to work to end this occupation. So I think that he needs to do that now.
Yeah, he really does. I mean, at some point it's going to be, I think it's too late for some people. Some people are just like, nope, too many babies have died. Like, there's no way there's no way my parents will vote for this guy. Like it's game over. They're like, I don't care what he does. He can call for a ceasefire tomorrow. It is too late. But you're right. Like it's, it is interesting what an election issue it's become. And what's amazing is just a level of arrogance and delusion about the fact that you actually do need these Arabs that you think are okay to kill to vote for you. So we'll see how that pans out. But I think that there's just been this really, like you were mentioning, how it feels very post 9/11-esque. And, one of the places that it's like, okay, people like you do get punished. There are consequences for speaking out against genocide. And on the other end of that, it's like you can be openly racist. You can be openly genocidal towards Palestinians. You can mock their dead. You can blame them for being murdered. And you can be a celebrity in Hollywood doing this, and there are zero consequences. And we've seen several people behave this way. I mean, some of the more horrible ones have been people like Deborah Messing and Michael Rappaport and these types. But it's been really unbelievable how racist some people have been. Like, I am shocked by that. I'm shocked by the level of open hate and celebration for an apartheid state that's committing genocide. I'm just curious if you're surprised by that, or maybe I'm being naive there too.
No, I think this has been going on for a really long time. I think that the world, the United States, should be shocked and appalled at the fact that our politicians are being paid by a foreign government to simp for them. I would be shocked to find out that these celebrities aren't being paid, because I wouldn't put it past the Israeli government to pay them to talk like this. So if they're going to do it to politicians, if they're willing to do it, you know, our government and our people were blown away to find out that there was a possibility that Russia had interfered in our election. Well, Israel has put politicians in its pockets for decades. And so to find out, like, I'm not shocked, because I know how much money the ADL gives each one of these, and AIPAC each one of these politicians every year for their campaigns. So again, like, when it comes to celebrities who are doing this, I think I would be shocked to find out they weren't paid. So
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, also there is like a huge contingent of people who do like a lot of fundraisers with like Friends of the IDF and all these sorts of things. So it does make sense, but it's still just kind of like, wow, like sometimes I'm kind of like, oh, I didn't even know that you were a racist. Like that lady who was in The Good Wife, who like randomly came out and said that, I don't know if you saw that, what she said was so insane. She was like upset with Black people and lesbians for supporting Palestine.
Yeah, she was upset like, with, she said she was upset with the solidarity movements that have happened between, multiple different liberation movements. And I find it hilarious to not think that people who are being oppressed will always find and support each other. So, you can't be the victim if you're the perpetrator. You can't keep acting like you're the victim when you're the oppressor. It's just
like
not
a massive
the way it works.
act of gaslighting. It's like the most insane level of gaslighting imaginable. And then there's, the other aspect of this has been the media and the level of dehumanization. I mean, this is something you point out all the time. The level of dehumanization of Palestinians in the media is so insane. I'm sure you saw this recent Thomas Friedman piece in the New York Times that was making the rounds, where he literally compared the Middle East to the animal kingdom and then went on to use insect analogies to talk about various resistance groups across the region and various countries. I mean, there was literally analogies to wasps and spiders and parasites. I was pretty blown away by that, not because Thomas Friedman said those things or thinks those things, but because it was published. I'm like, wow, this like went through editors who were like, yeah, this seems okay. Like we both know that there's no way that anybody could ever write that way about Israel. And or Jews, like I would never be okay with people writing about Jews that way.
Yeah.
But the fact that there are people who are okay with Arabs being written about that way. And then of course there was that Wall Street Journal article that was calling Dearborn, Michigan, like the capital of jihad. And it just goes on and on. It's like Palestinians, they're not killed, they die. Palestinian orphaned kids their families weren't murdered. They just lost family members. Like we don't know what happened. They've lost them. They can't, they just like needed to air tag them or something. And I mean, just the language that's used to describe, sometimes they're not even called children. Sometimes media outlets will go out of their way to use
young lady
but children, just because it's like anyways, I'm just curious your thoughts on that, because just, wow. It's like, sometimes I wonder, is there some editor at the New York Times who is specifically tasked with taking out the humanity of Palestinians from any piece written about them?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this has gone on for a long time, and this is part of a larger, broader goal to dehumanize Arabs and Palestinians specifically. It's been going on for a long time, and it's in order to allow people to feel less impacted by the fact that they're being murdered. And especially it was happening before because to dehumanize Arabs was to make it okay for the United States to also be a part of the murder and displacement and resource grabbing that has happened in the Middle East for decades. So again, I'm not really shocked by it. However, what I do think about it is that it is a reflection of how broken our media system is, that it's allowed. It's not reflective of, obviously, there, hundreds of thousands of people take to the streets all the time. It's not reflective of society right now. It's reflective of this specific kind of, intellectual elitism. And I think it's horrific, but I'm, sadly unsurprised by these articles. And I think, I think that our media should be on alert that they're complicit in the genocide of Palestinians and in the targeting of Palestinians and Arabs in the United States. The stabbing and the shootings of Palestinians that have happened in the United States are a direct result of our politicians and our media allowing for the dehumanization of Palestinians and Arabs as a whole, and they are 100% complicit in those horrific acts, but also the murder of 30,000 Palestinians and injuring of hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, it's so insane. And when I see the situation in Rafah right now, Jesus, I saw this video of these kids at the border talking to these Egyptian soldiers, and they were just like, please just like at least give us your guns, like, so we can fight back. Like, it just blows my mind. Like, people are waking up every day after having to sleep outside in the cold under like a tent made of a sheet. Yeah. And they spend their days searching for water and food because they're starving and there's a lot of thirst because aid is not allowed in. And on top of that, they have to dodge bombs and there's like no end in sight. And you have to have an insane level of dehumanization of these people for so many to see that. Like, because it's everywhere. Like, I know that probably John Kirby opens his phone and sees the same images we do. But like, it's just those kinds of people are okay with it because of this apparatus that's just said, like, these lives are not worth that much and it's okay for them to die in huge numbers. I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, but I also think that it's important to note that aid isn't just not coming in. It's being actually physically blocked by Israeli settlers. So it's not like these aid trucks don't exist. It's not like the aid isn't waiting to get in. What's happening is, multiple Western countries are defunding UNRWA. There are actual settlers standing in front of tenting themselves, ironically, putting themselves in tents and having raves in front of aid trucks in order to keep them out. And when you see these people and you hear interviews with them, they're all from Western countries. They're all like American or, Scottish or, they're all like Westerners, English, a few South African people. So I think it's very interesting that people who are claiming indigeneity to the land are blocking indigenous people from receiving food and water and aid and medical supplies. So it's not just not coming in, it's being actively stopped from coming in by, Western people and Western governments.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And on that note, one thing that I think we should just call this episode, Alana's not surprised, because, but Rania is, because another thing that's been somewhat surprising to me, that's going to go with that theme, it's just the behavior of Israelis. Like, yes, I have understood throughout my entire life that Israeli society hates Arabs, is fine with killing them, like bombs children, like the Israeli government, Israeli army, they excel at bombing children. That's like literally what they do best and have always done best in every war that they've fought because they're just the bravest army in the whole world. But I guess there's just something incredibly disturbing about all these videos. Like, they are filming themselves proudly committing genocide, and they're not covering it up. Like, they are proudly egomaniacally laughing and taunting and mocking as they blow up residential buildings, as they loot people's things, as they go through women's underwear, like in their bedrooms, in the houses that they rampage through, as they, put this crazy, insane fascist graffiti everywhere. And as they talk openly about their plans to like settle, resettle, to conquer, like they're using this language and they are celebrating the death of children. Like every Israeli accusation against Palestinians is actually a confession because they do all the stuff they accuse Palestinians of doing, including celebrating death. And it is like, I don't know, that to me has been surprising. And maybe this is because of the live stream nature of it, but there's something especially, I don't know, just like it's this really like cruel, it's like a level of cruelty and they're enjoying it. Has that surprised you or also not surprised? I'm just, because that's been like, that has really just made me question humanity on a number of levels.
I think it's disturbed me. I don't know if I am surprised at this point, but it took me a long time. Like, I don't think that I always believed that this was the way that Zionism functioned, in this, like, to go this far. I don't know that I always believed that. But, now I've come to understand, and I think the world is coming to understand that, if you allow a people to be brainwashed against another set of people, and with no repercussions, with no one telling them that that's wrong, with with money and aid and things coming in from all sorts of other places that are considered these bastions of liberty and freedom, like the United States, you will feel like you can do whatever you want with impunity, because you've been allowed to do so for so long. It's, they're in a lot of ways, the United States, like petulant child. And they have been allowed to get away with murder for a very long time, and literally.